Through many civilizations, the Giza Plateau remains a mystery to humanity to this day. But few would suspect that the pyramids here have an unexpected connection to a massive network, formed since the time of Atlantis. This is called the planetary energy grid, capable of storing and connecting the consciousness of all living beings on Earth. It possesses an electromagnetic field linked to the third dimension and even components of the higher fourth dimension, compatible with multidimensionality. So how was this energy grid discovered? How did humanity build it? Decoding these questions could help us understand the importance of the Great Pyramid that researchers have mentioned for hundreds of years. Each planetary energy grid has its own unique geometric shape, none identical, just as each living being perceives reality in its own way. Since the time of Atlantis, a consciousness grid named Chris formed, functioning to maintain Chris consciousness for the planet. And if this grid disappears, we cannot access that consciousness. The leaders knew it would be deactivated due to the actions of the Martians. So the Atlanteans simultaneously activated the Chris consciousness network around Earth. It would be a living electrical grid created by synthesizing crystals from living cells, hoping to complete it before we self-destruct, to return to the initial level of the energy grid. The 100th monkey theory. They read Ken Keyes. Here, in a wilderness area, scientists provided sweet potatoes placed on sand. The monkeys loved sweet potatoes but disliked the sandy soil. However, an 18-month-old monkey named Emo discovered a solution by washing the potatoes and taught this trick to her mother. Her monkey friends also learned the new method and passed it on to their mothers. Scientists recorded this event from 1952 to 1958. In the autumn of 1958, some monkeys on Kojima Island began washing potatoes in large numbers. Watson had placed 100 potatoes there. And naturally, most monkeys on the island spontaneously began washing their potatoes. If this had only happened on one island, they might have immediately realized there was some form of communication. But simultaneously, monkeys on neighboring islands also began washing their potatoes. Even on mainland Japan at Takasakiyama, they taught themselves to wash potatoes. There's no way these monkeys communicated in ways we know. This was the first time scientists observed such a strange phenomenon. They implicitly understood that there must be some special method emerging across the islands. Thanks to this, the monkeys could communicate and teach each other these things. A few years later, scientists began washing their own potatoes. One person noticed the 100th monkey phenomenon. A few years later, a group of scientists from Australia and Britain wondered. From then on, an experiment was conducted. They created a picture containing hundreds of different human faces. There were small faces and large faces, even faces hidden in the eyes. These people brought the picture to Australia and conducted research there. They selected specific individuals from a certain area, then showed each person the picture. Gave them a specific amount of time to carefully observe how many faces were in the picture. Typically, people saw 6, 7, 8, 9, or maybe 10 faces. Very few people saw more. After taking baseline samples from several hundred people and accurately recording what was, some researchers went to Britain, on the other side of the planet, and had the picture broadcast on cable television with only 6 British viewers. They carefully pointed out the locations of all the faces, every single one. A few minutes later, the researchers repeated the original experiment with new subjects and the results surprised them immensely. People could easily see most of the faces in that picture. At that moment, scientists knew for certain there was something about humans we had never known before. Currently, Australian Aboriginals have known about our secrets for a very long time. They know that there is an energy field connecting everyone together. Even in our society, there have been cases where someone on the other side of the planet invented something very complex. And at the exact moment when someone on this side returned to land, they were doing the same thing with the same principles and ideas, so both mistakenly believed it was their own invention. Such events have occurred many times over a long period. Therefore, after this experiment in Australia, they began to realize there must be something that could connect all of us. How and where was the grid consciousness created? Now we have the necessary foundation and can continue with the time in Atlantis. The project to rebuild the grid consciousness was initiated by 3 men. Thoth, a man named Ra, and a man named Archaeological. These men flew to a place now known as the Giza Plateau. At that time, it was not a desert but a tropical rainforest called Sekhem, meaning the land of the leaf-clad barbarians. The 3 men went there because they recognized the axis of the old consciousness grid extended out at this point. They would rebuild a new grid consciousness on the old axis following the guidance of higher consciousness level. However, they had to wait until the right moment when the pole shift passed the lowest point in consciousness. Then they would wait. Unfortunately, this lowest point was still far in their future. After that, they would have less than half a cycle, about 12,900 years or more, to complete everything by the end of the 20th cycle. We cannot wait longer because otherwise we ourselves would destroy this beautiful planet. Therefore, they had to complete the grid in higher dimensions, then proceed to build new grids. So Thoth and his friends went to the exact place where the merging consciousness vortices were emerging from the Earth. This location was about 1 mile from the Great Pyramid, right in the center on the axis of the Earth's vortex. The vortices could go where the vortices could go. This location could maintain a hole about 1 mile wide directed into the Earth. And because they were beings from the 6th dimension, this didn't take too much time. When the hole aligned with the newly created merging axis, they mapped the spiral paths of energy as they moved out of the hole and expanded into space. One of the spirals emerging from Earth was located near the current pyramid. Upon finding it, they built a small tower of ice in front of the hole. That tower was the key to the entire Giza architectural area. Then they erected the foundation of the Great Pyramid as we see it today. According to Thoth, the Giza Pyramid was built by him, not by Cheops. He said it was completed about 200 years before the Earth's axis shifted. At the top of the Great Pyramid, if the stone was placed correctly, it would lie exactly on the curve of the spiral. They aligned the center of the hole with the south face toward the ice tower and the north face toward the Great Pyramid perfectly. Even though they were a mile apart, archaeologists have been amazed when studying this field. They couldn't believe someone could do it more accurately even with modern technology we have. After that, 2 other pyramids were also built on this spiral. In fact, this is how the hole was discovered through aerial photographs. They noticed that the 3 pyramids were placed on a logarithmic spiral. From there, they traced the starting point of the spiral, went to that point, and found the hole in the ice tower. This discovery was made in the early 1980s. It was recorded in the Mark Lehner survey completed in 1984 by Mark Lehner. This is probably the most important site in Egypt and in Edgar Cayce's predictions. There was another hole, about 1 building away from the first spiral. It was slightly different, but then slowly they aligned themselves with the first spiral. So these 2 completed spirals defined the axis of what would eventually become the unified consciousness grid around the Earth. The sacred grid. After beginning to form a new grid over the old grid and placing a pyramid on the spiral, Thoth, Ra, and Archaeological mapped where these two energy streams arched and intersected at over 83,000 locations on the Earth's surface. In the fourth dimension, they built an entire network of towers and structures across the planet, precisely placed on the nodes of this energy matrix. All structures were arranged with the golden ratio, and mathematically, they all converged to a single point in today's Egypt, called the Solar Cross. The locations of the world's sacred sites are not random. It was a single consciousness that created them all. All, from Machu Picchu to Stonehenge, were essentially created by a single consciousness. Now we are gradually becoming more conscious of this. They show how one sacred site affects another, then affects other sites and more sites. These energy grids transcend time. They were built at different times, and they extend beyond any specific culture or geographical location. Clearly, they were executed by one consciousness, one being who coordinated the entire network. This ICAP area is the northern pole of the Meeting Consciousness Network. On the opposite side of the planet, in the South Pacific near the Tahiti Islands, there is a small island called Moria, where the southern pole of the electronic network is located. Those who have stood atop Machu Picchu mountain have gained a bird's-eye panoramic view. Machu Picchu sits at nearly 3,000 meters altitude in the Peruvian mountain range. Seemingly enveloped by a perfect circle of mountain, it resembles a circle embracing a massive energy source rising from the center. Moria Island has similar characteristics, except it's heart-shaped. Every house on Moria Island is heart-shaped with house numbers. The phallic Morian mountain at the center is much larger than Machu Picchu in Peru. But you'll still see overlapping mountain ranges surrounding this pole. This is precisely the southern pole of the entire Meeting Consciousness Network. If you go straight through Earth from Moria, you'll reach Egypt. Only that path has a very slight curve, but that's natural. The Morian pole is the negative pole, representing femininity, and the Egyptian pole is the positive pole. All sacred sites are connected to the Egyptian pole, and they all interconnect through the central axis leading to Moria. Of course, it's a torus shape. Whether interested or not, you've probably heard much research surrounding the Great Pyramid structures on the Giza Plateau. Moreover, this is an extremely important point for our planet. If so, does the nearby Sphinx statue have any special connection? This secret will gradually be revealed in the coming time. For now, joining the virtual memory network, Darling says hello.